Alright students, we are here to begin prepping our board for painting. I have my hardwood panel and I have a small glass of water over here. I also have my gesso ready. Now I have two kinds to show you that I really like. I like the Premier Gesso and I also like the ProArt Gesso. For this project I would try and stay away from Liquitex. It's really good for creating a textured surface but doesn't dry quite matte as you'd like it. So the reason why we like to prep our board with gesso is that the oil won't sink into it. It creates a nice smooth surface for us to paint on, and also sets the value at white, which is easier to work from when we are doing a photo rendering project. So I have here my brush. It is a 2-inch brush with a very soft bristle. You can tell if your brush is soft if you brush it against your face and it doesn't hurt. It's pretty flexible as well. And we use a large brush so to cover more surface and leave less brush strokes. So it also takes less time to cover your entire surface. The next step is I'm going to seal my edges. This will help the board from getting too soaked up and starting to warp. You're still going to have a little bit of warping because of how wet the gesso will be, but I found this actually helps prevent some of that. It also gives you that nice clean crisp edge when you're finished with your piece. So this is just normal masking tape. This is called artist tape specifically, masking tape for artists, so it won't ruin paintings. A little kinder and softer when you peel it off than if you were to peel it off a paper, it won't rip, you know? So now that I got those corners fixed, I'm going to be pouring the gesso into this bowl that I got here. Now this is the premium gesso that I'm using. And for this project, you want to pour a little bit of water into your gesso to make it a little bit more liquidy. This allows the gesso to dry flatter than if we had just used the gesso straight from the jar. And I'm mixing it up so that it's all consistent, the same. And then it'll be a process of laying it onto the canvas with nice, smooth brush strokes once it's all mixed up. Try and keep any hairs or dust from getting into it. You don't want any kind of bumps or raised areas in your painting when you're creating the surface. It's trying to get as smooth as possible, being very steady. If you see brush strokes as it's going on while it's wet, don't worry about that. What happens is once you dry it, those will flatten out if you had enough water in your gesso. Now, I'm using a blow dryer to try and quicken the process. When I use this blow dryer, I have to be careful, have it on medium heat. I'm not going too close to the surface of the canvas because if I do, it can cause little ripples in the surface. It also can cause the top layer of the paint to dry faster than the under layer, meaning it'll start cracking, almost like a dried bed of mud, if you consider it that way. And this is going to take several layers, so a lot of patience is needed on this part because the more layers you paint, the longer it takes to dry the next layer. So it takes a bit longer. I think this entire thing took me about 30 minutes with the blow dryer. It could take up to an hour depending on how many layers you need to cover the surface so that no board is showing through. So we're completely sealing it and making that smooth surface for when we go in and paint our oil painting on top of this. I like to kind of alter between horizontal and vertical brush strokes to get that more flat surface. It helps fill in the valleys and peaks that a brush stroke makes. You can tell if it's completely dry if there's no shine to it or if the board isn't cold when you touch it. And I have sped this up if you can't tell because I don't think anyone wants to watch a 30-minute long video of paint drying. So the last layer that I put on is a bit thinner. It's just meant to fill in any other cracks. that's going to cover this canvas. Now I guess while we're waiting for this next layer to dry is a good time to talk about why we use gesso instead of just white acrylic to prep our boards. Gesso has been made so that it has a matte finish. That way your paints will sit nicely on top of it. Things will mix better. It won't have that shine to it. And it's nice to like sand or if you need to do any things with it. If you use acrylic, just plain white acrylic, then you risk having that glossy surface, which makes it hard to manipulate oil paints on top of it. Now, don't do this on your piece yourself. I'm just removing the tape so you can see what those nice clean edges look like when you're finished. But when you're doing your final project, please keep the tape on until you're completely finished with your project. So there we go, we have our final board. Nice clean white canvas to work off of, and it's wonderfully smooth, almost like as smooth as paper. Actually, the texture is a lot like paper, so. Alright, you guys got this. On to the next step.